Now, before we attempt to do our configuration for MariaDB, we're going to need some files, and we're going to need to copy them up to our server. It'll just make things easier for us. You can see right now I have no files in my server, so I'm in my home directory for admin, but if I do ls, there's nothing in there, nothing in that directory. Now, in my system, which is the prompt on the left, this is just my local PowerShell. I'm not SSHing to anything. These are where my files are. So I have mine just on my D drive. So if I want to copy these to that server, I can use the scp command to do that. So you can see I've got a bunch of files here. Let's say I only wanted to copy those SQL scripts. I'm going to copy d:\\\asterisk.sql, asterisk is the wildcard. And then just like I would use SSH, so the scp command is very simple. It just allows you to copy files. But the scp command, secure copy, will allow you to use SSH to connect and copy files. So I can either copy files to or from my server with this command. It's the same syntax as CP. So you have your source is the first argument, the destination is the second argument, except either the source or the destination, you can have a prefix of the username and server name. So in my case, my username and server name, I'm just going to scroll up because I already have it saved here, is 35.224, etc. Then I put a colon, and then I can put a path to the file. Now I could do something like this. I could put the tilde, which means put it in my home directory, or I could put a path. I could say just copy it directly to Etsy or into var or what have you. If I just leave this blank though, it should copy it directly into my home directory. So let me put my password in. Oops, I think I miskeyed it. There we go. So it says it copied the files. Come over here, and I can see the files there. I also have some PHP files here that I'd also like to copy up to that server. So since I'm here, I'm also going to copy those PHP files. We're going to need those later. So that should be 3 files. So we're going to go ahead and copy those. And if I come over here, I should see those. Oops. There we go. I should see those files. So to set up MariaDB, there's a command you can run that will lock it down and make sure it's set up correctly. It's MySQL Secure Installation. So it's a good idea to run this. So we're going to go ahead and run that command. The first thing it's going to ask is for the current password. Since we just installed it, there is no password. So you're just going to hit enter, and then it's going to tell you, well, there's no password. It might be a good idea to set it. So we're going to say yes to set that password, and I'm going to type in a password. And then it's going to ask you to re-enter it. And if you entered it correctly, it should say success. Entered it twice the same way. Should we remove anonymous users? Yes. Disallow root login remotely? Absolutely. That way people can't log into this from a remote computer. Remove the test database. I'm going to remove that because we just don't need it. We already have everything we need. And then reload privileges table is going to make sure that it restarts or reloads the privileges so we can log into it. Now when you set that password, make sure you remember what that is, write it down. You're going to need it again. It's going to be kind of difficult for you to complete the lab if you forget that password. So make sure you do that. So once that's all set up, our next step is to try to connect to our SQL server. So you're going to use that MySQL command. Now I know this isn't MySQL, it's MariaDB, but the MySQL client works with MariaDB, and it gets installed when you install MariaDB. MariaDB doesn't have its own client, they just use MySQL client. It works the same way. Then you're going to pass a username with the -u argument, and it's going to be root, and -p or -p means that you want to supply a password. If you don't put the -p, it assumes that you don't want to use a password, and it'll just try to log in. Of course, that's going to fail. So we're going to use -p to make sure it works. I'm going to put in my password, and I'm connected. So now I'm in my MariaDB server. The next step is I have to create my new database. So I'm going to create database, and our sample application that we're going to work with here is Northwind. This is just a sample database that was originally developed for Microsoft Access. It got ported to SQL and Sybase, and then somebody made a version of it for MariaDB. So we're just going to use this as our sample database. So I'm going to create that database, and then once it's created, we should be able to change our context to that database. So notice that it says the database changed. Now it says Northwind inside the brackets instead of none. So now I know I'm in that database. Now, if you recall, I downloaded, or uploaded rather, some files. Some of them were SQL files. Because I started MariaDB from my home directory, I know that those SQL files are there. So I can use the source command to run those database scripts. So northwind.sql was the first one. This one is what's going to create all of the tables for our database. So when I run that, if I type show tables, it's going to show me all the new tables that it created. So now I've got a bunch of tables, but I need some data. So I'm going to use source. The other database is northwinddata.sql. I'm going to run that. And now if I want to see if there's some data in my table, I can run select star from customers. By the way, you have to end every command in MariaDB with the semicolon. If you forget to do that, I'll show you what happens. If you forget the semicolon, it'll just bring up a new line. Then you can just type the semicolon on the new line. It'll work that way as well. So you can see I've got a whole bunch of data here, so I know it worked. I set up my MariaDB server, and I'm able to see all my data. So the next step is we're going to set up the PHP application to work with Apache.